I'm EZRAH, and this is the Manila Times. On July 24, Monday, President and Agriculture Secretary Bongbong Marcos is set to give his second State of the Nation address, over a year after the beginning of his term. Just last week, President Marcos signed into law the new Agrarian Emancipation Act, or Republic Act 11953, that writes off farmers' debts that's worth over 57 billion pesos. This will benefit over 600,000 agrarian reform beneficiaries. President Marcos said he is confident to report some progress in this year's SONA. Here to give us insights is former Agriculture Secretary and Chairman of Federation of Free Farmers, Mr. Leonardo Montemayor. Welcome to the Manila Times, sir. Yes, sir. Just last week, President Marcos signed into law the new Agrarian Emancipation Act, which writes off the farmers' loans of worth over 57 billion pesos. So, sir, in the upcoming son of President Marcos, what else can the current administration do to help the farmers in the agricultural sector?
First of all, let me say that the president is to be congratulated for fulfilling his pledge in the last SONA for the passage of that new Agrarian Emancipation Act. In just a year's time, he was able to fulfill that promise, and that will benefit over 600,000 agrarian reform beneficiaries. But looking ahead, there is still a big backlog of agrarian reform beneficiaries or potential agrarian reform beneficiaries who have yet to be fully covered by the land transfer component. I estimate that when the president assumed office in last year from the Duterte administration, there was a backlog of about 600,000 to 700,000 hectares of lands that had not yet been covered by the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. As far as I can tell, there has been no movement with respect to coverage of that remaining balance. So to complete the coverage, there has to be more actions taken to cover the remaining balance. So as I said, that's about 600 to 700,000 hectares of agricultural lands. Secondly, there has been no movement, as far as I can tell, on the president's announcement last year calling upon the Congress to prioritize the passage of a land use policy law or land use act. It remains, as far as I can tell, it remains in suspended animation, especially in the Senate. There has been no movement in that regard. So that's critical, because if you finally clear all impediments to agrarian reform beneficiaries holding the titles to their lands, so that they can now, freely dispose of their lands, use it for collateral to secure loans from banks. If there are no, let's say, conditions or guidelines such as can be provided by a land use bill, farmers could be tempted or enticed to surrender or to sell off their lands unless there are guidelines under this land use policy law. There is, of course, there are provisions in the agrarian reform laws which say that farmers must not sell lands given to them under the law for 10 years from the award. But it's sometimes very tempting if they're offered millions of pesos to sell 1 hectare of land, unless there are prohibitions contained in that land use bill. So to me, that's also a critical component or support for this new agrarian reform emancipation law, a land use bill.
Sir, for this, you said there's still a balance of over 600,000 to 700,000 hectares of land. Would you know where's the location of this land that still needs to be? by the
This is all. This is all over the Philippines, Ezra. So it's a nationwide issue.
So aside from this, sir, what else does the agricultural sector need now?
Well, of course, today, greater support. It's the usual litany of litany of prayers or needs that our farmers pray for every year, and which the government also promises to deliver every year. So we keep on saying the novena. It's irrigation, uh, more support in terms of lowering the prices of inputs, fertilizer, seeds, fuel, uh, more infrastructure, farm to market roads, irrigation, better marketing of products, and so on. So it's a it's the same as I said, litany of requests from the farmers.
Sir, following up on that, you said irrigation twice, but as of now, the Pag-asa has officially released an advisory that El Nino has begun for the Philippines. So, what are the preparations of the agricultural sector for the looming El Nino, which they said will affect uh, farms on the last quarter of the year pa?
From what I understand, Ezra, uh, El Nino will not hit all parts of the country in the same way. So there will be certain portions where actually there might be more rains during a certain period, but in other parts there will really be a shortage of water or less water. So hopefully in those areas where rains will be forthcoming, hopefully there will be more efforts to impound this rainwater. I don't know if we still have enough time to construct even small scale impoundment or catchment systems to be able to store the water, whether it's above ground or below ground, and then use this water as needed during the drought period. Number two would be we need clear and timely advisories, especially from Pag-asa and the Department of Agriculture, so that in areas where there will really be a severe lack of water, farmers ahead of time will be given the advice to shift to crops that will need less irrigation. For example, instead of continuing to plant rice, shift to less water-intensive crops, maybe like vegetables and so on. So those two types of interventions would be very helpful to our farmers.
Thank you so much for your insights, President of Federation of Free Farmers and former Agricultural Secretary, Mr. Leonardo Montemayor. Maraming salamat po, sir.